I walked into his old office and shut the door behind me. For a moment, I just stood there, letting the quiet sink in. The blinds were half open, dust catching in the afternoon light, and the faint hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. His nameplate was gone, of course, but the outline of where it had been was still visible on the desk. I ran my hand along the polished surface and couldn't help but remember the first day I walked into this same office. Except back then, it wasn't mine. It was my brother's. 3 months earlier, I'd been sitting across from him in the break room when he leaned back with that smug grin I'd known since childhood. "You hear the news?" he asked, stirring his coffee like it was just another Tuesday. I knew what he was getting at. The promotion. The one I had been quietly gunning for all year. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Congrats." "Thanks, man." He gave my shoulder a brotherly pat, but it felt more like a shove. "You know, it's crazy how it worked out. The big idea I pitched must have sealed the deal." The idea. My idea. That stung more than the promotion itself. 3 weeks before, I'd stayed late almost every night, sketching out a streamlined workflow system that would cut client onboarding time in half. It wasn't just a small tweak, it was transformative. And when I shared it with him, it was supposed to be in confidence. Brother to brother. He'd asked for my thoughts because he said he was stuck. I had no reason not to trust him. And then, during the quarterly presentation, he unveiled it like it had been his brainchild all along. He didn't even flinch, didn't stumble over the details. He presented it with all the confidence in the world, smiling as though the applause belonged to him. I didn't say anything at the time. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have stood up and called him out in front of everyone. But he was my older brother. The guy who once taught me how to ride a bike, who defended me in high school when a senior tried to shove me into a locker. I told myself it wasn't worth burning bridges, especially not over work. So when the promotion went to him, I swallowed the bitterness and congratulated him like a good sport. But being in his shadow wasn't new. It was practically a tradition in my family. Growing up, Mom would beam at his report cards taped to the fridge, while mine got a good job, honey, before being tucked in a drawer. Dad used to brag about his football games, while I was the one holding the water bottles on the sidelines. Even as adults, the family group chat lit up with his accomplishments. Ethan closed another deal, or Ethan's moving up fast. Meanwhile, I was just Michael, dependable, steady, the one who never caused trouble. At work, though, I thought it would be different. I'd carved out my own corner, quietly proving myself with solid projects and steady results. I wasn't flashy like him. I didn't charm the bosses over golf or drinks. I just worked hard, and I thought, eventually, that would be enough. Apparently, it wasn't. The weeks that followed were rougher than I'd expected. He strutted around the office like he owned the place, cracking jokes in meetings, delegating with a tone that was just a little too sharp when it came to me. Every time he looked at me, I could see it in his eyes. He thought he'd beaten me. And yet, I never said a word. I kept my head down. I worked. I told myself my time would come. But late at night, when I was staring at the ceiling instead of sleeping, I'd replay the moment he'd stolen my words, my diagrams, my late-night effort. I'd see him basking in praise that should have been mine, and it ate at me. Still, I didn't expect what came next. 3 months into his new role, I got a message from his boss, Mr. Hanley, a man who rarely wasted time on pleasantries. He wanted to have a word. When I walked into the conference room, Hanley was already there, arms crossed, expression unreadable. My stomach knotted. For a second, I thought maybe I was in trouble, though I couldn't think of what for. Then he said, "Michael, I need someone reliable to step into Ethan's role. Effective immediately." My mouth went dry. "I'm sorry, what?" He exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Your brother's out. Let's leave it at that. I'll spare you the details, but he wasn't what we needed after all. You, though, I've been watching. You're thorough, careful. People trust you. I want you in the seat." I must have looked like an idiot, blinking at him in silence, because he added, "If you're not interested, tell me now. But I think you'll do well." Interested? My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. For months I'd been quietly wishing for this very thing, though I never imagined it would come this way. I managed a nod. "Yes, I'm interested." And just like that, I was in. That's how I ended up in my brother's office. My office now, shutting the door behind me and letting the silence press in. The walls still smelled faintly of his cologne, and a half-forgotten notepad with his handwriting sat abandoned in the drawer. His shadow was still here, lingering, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't standing under it. I was standing on my own. The first call came that evening. I'd barely made it home when my phone buzzed, his name flashing across the screen. For a second, I debated letting it ring out. But avoiding him wasn't going to work forever, and some part of me wanted to hear what he'd say. I answered, "Hey, you?" His voice was sharp, almost a growl. "You took my job?" I swallowed. "I didn't take anything, Ethan. Hanley offered it to me." He laughed bitterly. "Offered? Yeah, right. You've been waiting for this, haven't you? Sitting there, biding your time, hoping I'd mess up so you could swoop in." I wanted to tell him the truth, that I hadn't expected this, that I would have been fine just working my corner. But the words stuck in my throat. Maybe because, deep down, there was a part of me that had wanted this all along. Just not like this. "Ethan, I didn't push for it," I said finally. "Hanley made the decision. I didn't." "Save it," he snapped. "You think this makes you better than me? You think you finally one-upped me? Congrats, little brother. Enjoy the scraps." Then the line went dead. I sat there staring at the black screen, feeling like I'd just stepped off a roller coaster that hadn't slowed down before the stop. The fallout came quickly. At work, whispers spread like wildfire. Some people acted like nothing had happened, business as usual. Others gave me these knowing looks, as if I'd masterminded the whole thing. A few even congratulated me with a hint of pity in their voices, like I'd gotten the job only because Ethan had flamed out. At home, things were worse. Mom called the next day, her voice trembling. "Michael, what's going on with your brother? He says you stole his promotion." I sighed, pressing the bridge of my nose. "Mom, I didn't steal anything. Hanley let him go. He offered me the role because he thought I could handle it." "But Ethan worked so hard," she said. "You know how much pressure he's been under. And now he's out of a job, and you're in his place? Don't you see how that looks?" How it looked. Always about appearances. I'd grown up with that. Family dinners where the unspoken rule was, don't embarrass us. Ethan was the golden boy, the one they bragged about at church potlucks, while I was the safe, quiet backup plan. And now, suddenly, the roles were reversed, and it was like nobody knew how to process it. "Mom," I said carefully, "I didn't ask for this. But I'm not turning it down either. I deserve this shot." She didn't respond right away. When she finally did, her voice was clipped. "Just try not to rub it in his face. He's hurting." As if I'd been parading around, taunting him. As if I hadn't spent my whole life in his shadow. Dad called later that week, more blunt than Mom. "Look, son, I know you're excited, but this could tear the family apart. Maybe you should have stepped aside. Let them give the role to someone else." Stepped aside. The words nearly made me laugh. After years of working late nights, of putting in effort no one noticed, I was supposed to step aside so my brother's pride could stay intact? "Dad, with all due respect, no. I'm not stepping aside. Not this time." Silence. Then a disappointed sigh. "I just hope you know what you're doing." But the truth was, I didn't know. Not entirely. Because as the weeks passed, the strain grew heavier. Ethan stopped speaking to me altogether, which was both a relief and a weight. At family gatherings, he'd show up late, avoid eye contact, mutter short replies if I tried to talk. At one Sunday dinner, he deliberately sat at the far end of the table, scrolling on his phone while Mom served lasagna. The air was so thick with tension you could have cut it with a knife. And then there were the little digs. A cousin mentioning how tough it must be for Ethan, losing his job like that, right in front of me. An uncle clapping him on the back and saying, "Don't worry, you'll bounce back. Not everyone's cut out for leadership anyway." Ethan's glare shot across the room like a bullet. Work wasn't much easier. Cleaning up after him meant unraveling a mess I hadn't even realized he'd created. Reports half finished, clients left dangling without follow-up, a trail of charm covering cracks big enough to sink the ship. It was exhausting, but also eye-opening. For all his charisma, he hadn't been good at the job. Not really. And yet, every night when I left the office, I'd feel this pang in my chest. Guilt, maybe. Or maybe just the residue of years spent believing he was supposed to be the successful one. Now that I was in his seat, I wasn't sure if I'd earned it, or if I'd just been the safer option. The turning point came one Friday evening. I was packing up when I saw him waiting by the elevators. He looked tired, older somehow, with dark circles under his eyes. For a brief moment, I thought maybe he'd come to make peace. Instead, he smirked. Don't get too comfortable, Mike. You think Hanley won't chew you up and spit you out, just like he did me? You're not built for this. You'll see. The elevator dinged, and he stepped in without another word. I stood there long after the doors closed, my bag hanging from my shoulder, heart thudding in my chest. Maybe he was right. Maybe I wasn't built for this. But standing in that silence, I realized something. I had to prove him wrong. Not to Hanley. Not to Mom or Dad. Not even to the office full of people whispering about me. To myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the flicker of something I hadn't let myself feel before. Determination. By the start of the next quarter, the thing I'd sketched in the margins of a notebook was a living system. The onboarding tracker pinged handoffs automatically. Bottlenecks were flagged in real time. And our crankiest legacy client sent a note that just said, "Whatever you changed, don't change it back." I printed it and taped it inside my drawer like a kid with a gold star. At the all hands, I kept my voice steady and my slides simple. No fireworks. These gains are a team effort, I said, and meant it. I called people out by name for the unglamorous tasks. QA checklists, late-night bug hunts, patient client calls where nothing went right till minute 59. People clapped, not loudly, but warmly. It felt different than the applause I'd heard the day Ethan pitched my idea. This was smaller, truer. Afterward, Hanley caught me outside the conference room. "Walk with me," he said, already moving. In his office, he shut the door, then leaned against the window ledge like he was deciding how honest to be. "Truth is," he said, "I knew that idea was yours." The floor shifted under me. "What?" He shrugged. "Version history. Slack timestamps. People talk. I don't hire statues. I hire teams. Not the first time someone tried to surf on another person's wave. I wanted to see who did the work when it wasn't glamorous." He studied me. Charisma can sell a Tuesday. Competence pays the mortgage. Heat climbed my neck. Then why promote him in the first place? "I tried to coach him," Hanley said quietly. "Thought maybe the title would force different habits. It didn't. I'm not proud of how long I waited. I won't make that mistake twice." I didn't know what to do with the mix of anger and relief crawling through me. "So why tell me now?" "Because you're doing it right," he said, lifting his chin toward the bullpen. "You credited the team. You fixed the mess without a victory lap. Consider this, if it helps. What happened wasn't about you not being enough. It was about him not being ready." He slid a small frame across his desk. Inside was a photograph of an old race car pit crew, mid-change, hands blurred, faces intent. "Keep this if you want," he said. A reminder that speed is teamwork with a stopwatch. I took it. My throat felt tight. "Thank you," I managed. The family part crashed in the way family always does, sideways. Mom's birthday landed on a Sunday, and I showed up with flowers and a store-bought pie she pretended to love. Ethan arrived late, wearing a smile like armor. We circled each other the way we always had. He filled the room. I filled the silence. Dessert plates clinked. An aunt asked too brightly, "So, work going okay?" As if the whole table didn't already know. Ethan's jaw pulsed. Mom tried to rescue it. "We don't need to talk about that." "Maybe we do," Ethan said, his voice light and dangerous. "Since Michael's the golden child now." Dad put his fork down. "Enough." It landed with more weight than I expected. Dad, who'd told me to step aside, looked at me and then at my brother like he was seeing double. "Your mother and I didn't raise you boys to take what isn't yours," he said. He said it to the room, but it wasn't aimed at me. Ethan laughed once, a brittle sound. "You're all rewriting history." I reached into my bag and slid a copy of the first diagram across the table. I hadn't meant to bring it out, but the moment asked for facts. My scrawl filled the margins. The date stamped in the corner was from weeks before the presentation. He didn't touch it. He didn't have to. We all saw what we saw. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin. "Baby," she said, voice fraying, "say you'll fix this." Ethan stared at the paper like it had been written in a language he used to know. Then he stood, chair scraping, and walked out the front door. I didn't chase him. He texted 2 nights later. "Diner? Noon?" I went. He was already in a booth, hands wrapped around a mug he didn't seem to be drinking from. When he looked up, I saw the kid who taught me to skate by pulling me around a cracked cul-de-sac with a rope and a laugh that made falling feel like flying. "I did it," he said without preamble, eyes on the Formica. I took it. I told myself it was teamwork, that we're family, so what's mine is yours. But I knew. He swallowed. I was drowning, Mike. The meetings, the people, Half of leadership is smiling while you're 3 mistakes deep. I thought if I could just deliver one thing, the rest would click. I'm sorry. It was not a grand apology. It was crooked and clumsy and exactly the size I could believe. I won't lie for you, I said. Not to get you hired. Not to make this easier. He nodded. I'm not asking. He dug in his backpack and slid over a resume. But could you read this? Tell me what's real. What I'm actually good at. Not the stuff I pretended. I read. I circled his strengths: client rapport, pressure handling, presenting. I crossed out the parts that sounded like me. You're not a builder, I said. You're a connector. Aim for account roles. Business development. Leave product to people who like to live in the weeds. He huffed something like a laugh. You always like the weeds. Someone has to, I said, and for the first time, it didn't feel like an apology. I sent his resume to a contact at a partner firm. No promises, no special pleading. A month later, he texted me a photo of a new badge. Different company, different color lanyard. Account executive, it read. He added, first win buys you pancakes. The thaw was slow, like winter testing spring. He stopped dodging family dinners. Mom stopped whispering. Dad clapped me on the shoulder and said, gruffly, proud of you, son, like he was still learning how to shape the words around me. It wasn't perfect. It was better. Back at the office, I hung Hanley's pit crew photo beside the whiteboard. I put my nameplate on the door and left the blinds all the way open. I kept one thing from my brother, a small dent in the desk near the drawer, the size of a coin. He'd made it his first week, slamming a binder down too hard when a call went sideways. I ran my thumb over it some mornings, a reminder that this chair came with history and a handle on how not to repeat it. One evening, long after the bullpen lights dimmed, I stood in the doorway and looked at the room. The tracker ticked quietly. A junior analyst yawned and grinned and waved goodnight. Outside, the city was all brake lights and possibility. I walked into his old office and shut the door behind me, not to keep anyone out, but to be alone for a second with the truth of it. The idea hadn't made me. The promotion hadn't either. What did was everything that came after. The slow work, the plain choices, the decision, finally, to stop measuring myself in someone else's shadow. The dent stayed. The door opened. And the next day, we got back to work.